Welcome back. You guys have been along for the journey on a lot of garden prep and getting it planted, but today we're going to do a full garden tour so you can see what's going well. There are some things that are doing really, really well, probably the best that I've ever seen in my 15 years of gardening, where some things are awful, just the worst ever. So it'll be a good little tour so you can see what's going well, what's not going well, and kind of my game plan. And also I have kind of a unique perspective because I'm in zone 3/zone 4 Minnesota, which means we have a really short growing season. So I have to be super crafty about how I'm growing food, and we grow a lot of food. This is a 1,300 square foot garden. I also have some other gardens closer by the cabin, and it produces enough produce for Ryan and I that this is essentially all we eat year long. I rarely ever have to buy produce at the store. So super neat. Let's definitely dive in so you can kind of see what I have going on in here. And I want to apologize ahead of time. It's kind of breezy and windy today. I'm wearing my little mic so that hopefully I'll keep the wind noise down, but this has been my only weather window to get out here. We've had unbelievable amounts of rain. I haven't looked at the records, but I think we're close. Everything's been underwater and flooded, which has also brought the wonderful mosquitoes. I've actually spent very little time out here because either it's raining or I'm getting eaten alive. So it's finally not raining, and because it's windy, there's less mosquitoes. So I'm like, now is the time. We're gonna do garden tour. First, let's talk about how this garden is set up. So I have 13 different rows. They are 3 feet wide, and I have 1 foot wide walking paths. And my garden is about 52 feet wide and 25 feet long. And so it's roughly around 1,300 square feet. And I'm just absolutely loving it. This space has been super productive. We just put in this garden last year, so this garden is officially a year old. Happy birthday to my garden. And last year was amazing, but I'm hoping this year will be even better. And you'll notice my fencing here. I use electric poultry netting. It works awesome to keep any of the little critters out from wanting to munch on my garden, especially these little critters. Right, little honey? All right, now let's get inside and start the tour. So to give you a quick overview of this section, this is my area of brassicas, and they are just thriving. It looks absolutely gorgeous. So let's go ahead and look at the details here. So right up front is where I have my companion planting flowers. You're gonna notice a lot of these throughout my garden, especially in my brassica group is where I most heavily have my flowers, because these are most prone to pests, and things like marigolds, nasturtiums, they really help repel pests and draw in beneficial pollinators and even predatory insects that will feed on those pests. So love having these, and they also provide just a nice pop of color. So first up are my cabbages. These are, I think, gonna be the biggest cabbages I've ever grown. I mean, here's my hand for comparison, and I don't have dainty little lady hands. And so we're still waiting on the heads to really form. They're just starting. I planted these, I think, early May, so just about 6 weeks ago, but we're really cooking along here. Next up is my tatsoi. Now these guys have had a rough go. First of all, I had a lot of damage from flea beetles. This is the first time that I've really struggled with them, and I was kind of late on getting in with a treatment. And that helped for a while, but then it started to rain every single day, so it just didn't make sense to come out and spray. And I can see there's some just kind of jumping around. And some of these are already starting to bolt or go to seed. So this whole patch has kind of been SOL for me. Next up are the calendula. I have 3 different calendula bunches here, and this is another lovely companion planting flower and a medicinal flower. So these have some really great resins in there. They're really nice and sticky when you pick them on a hot summer day, and it's just so soothing and healing. I put calendula in almost all of my home body care products, so love calendula. Next we have even more cabbages. So we have 3 more heads here. This one randomly disappeared, so not sure where that one went. And as far as what we do with the cabbages, mostly sauerkraut. We love sauerkraut, and it's a great ferment that'll keep for about a year in the fridge. We're still eating sauerkraut from last year, so we better finish it up because we're gonna have a lot coming here soon. Next are my 2 Napa cabbages. These guys also experienced a little bit of flea beetle damage. Actually, you might be able to see them. There we go. You might be able to see those little buggers on the edge of the leaf. So they're also causing some damage. Oh, looks like we have a grasshopper too. Hi, little dude. So everyone's wanting to eat my Napa cabbages, but they're hanging on there, and I'll be using these to make kimchi. And we have a good, decent head on these, so honestly, I could probably harvest this anytime. Here we have more marigolds, and then we come into the sea of broccoli. I think I have a total of 18 broccoli plants. We have those there, and a bunch over there as well. And these guys are also doing really, really well. They are definitely filling out the space. I use an 18-inch spacing, and they are using every inch of that. And we are just starting to get little heads to form. So I can't even wait to see how those are gonna fill out. I think they're gonna do really great. And thankfully the flea beetles have not affected the broccoli whatsoever, but we may end up getting some cabbage worms before long, but none yet, so I'm keeping an eye out. And then over here I have 4 different Brussels sprouts. These guys are cruising along. They are very slow producers, so I probably won't be harvesting sprouts from these until at least September. Thankfully, they tolerate the frost really well, so they are kind of one of the last ones that are left standing in the garden. And Brussels sprouts are one of the only brassicas that I do add cages to. These guys are going to get pretty tall. They'll probably, I would say get up to about here, so they'll even extend past the cage. And while we're down here, let's talk about this mulch. I know I've been talking about it in some of my other videos, so definitely check them out if you haven't already, about kind of all the details behind it. But to give you a quick snippet, mulching has become my new best friend. So around the plants, I like to use organic straw because it's kind of a temporary thing. You can lift it up, move it around, compost it in the fall, whatever you want to do. And it's been doing great. I haven't weeded under these guys for basically since I planted them 6 weeks ago. And you can see there's, you know, a couple weeds here and there, especially on the edges where things get thin, but it's really minimal. And with how much rain we've had, the weeds would be absolutely out of control. So this is awesome. And then on the walking paths, this is the new thing that I did this year. I added wood chips. Wood chips are a little bit more of a permanent solution, so I don't necessarily recommend it for around plants, but for the walking paths, it has been great. There's nothing that I dislike more than weeding walking paths. So the fact that I hardly ever have to weed these at all anymore, you can see there's just a couple here and there. It's just been awesome. So let's start row 2. Some of this is repeat, like these are 2 more of the Brussels sprouts. Here's 6 more broccolis. These are all kind of in the same status as the other ones. So just starting that head formation. These nasturtiums are just doing awesome. They are blowing up. These guys got planted earlier than some of the others. And then I have 2 cauliflowers. Me personally, I'm not a huge cauliflower fan, but Ryan loves them. So I grow a couple for him. Looks like we're just getting started down there. And then this section I've been harvesting from, so it's looking a little bit more bare. I used to have pak choi in here, but we have since eaten all of those. I love to eat it in stir fry. But here are my pride and joy. These are, let me get this weed out of the way so you can see it. This is some of the best kohlrabi I have ever grown. You can get my hand next to it. I mean, those things are huge and they're delicious. Ryan loves kohlrabi. It's one of his favorite vegetables, so I mostly grow them for him. And he likes to eat them just sliced raw with some salt on it, kind of like a chip. And yeah, he just loves them. And look at that purple color. I love the purple kohlrabi. Some more over here. He has some eating to do. And once this patch is empty, I'm gonna end up putting my eggplant here. So they are still in their pots up by the cabin, so they're waiting for their moment to come down. And I was thinking this would be a good section to plop them in. So within the week, we should be through the rest of these. It's gonna start to get hot next week, so it's time for these guys to get eaten. Next, we have more nasturtiums, and it looks like this one has some blooms in there. Here you can see one of the negatives of using organic straw as mulch is sometimes it can drop some seeds, but the good news is these come up so easy. You just lift them up because they've just germinated in the straw. They're not in the soil, so they just lift up super easy. I also find just kind of like lifting up the straw is all you need to do, so no big deal. Next up is celery. Celery can be pretty finicky to grow from seed, but so far so good. We're starting to get some stalk growth there, but we're still pretty tiny. So hopefully we'll keep getting some growth here. Next up is my overflow of potatoes. So my big potato row is way down there, which we'll get to. but these were some extras and I couldn't bear to throw them out, and I had this extra little corner. So these guys are looking awesome, and these are purple potatoes, which is a new variety for me. I'm trying to remember what the exact name is, but they're deep purple and just beautiful. And so far so good. At my last homestead, we would get the Colorado potato beetles so terribly, and I haven't noticed any, at least here. So I'm hopeful that maybe they don't know I'm here and they'll just leave me alone, because they just absolutely destroyed my crop. Now, before we get too far, I wanted to take a quick break so I can show you my sweet new watering system, which is going to make watering a breeze around here once the rain stops. So I just got this Smart Garden Watering 2-zone system from the sponsor of today's video, which is RainPoint. And if you're looking for a great way to simplify how you water your garden, you're definitely going to want to check this out. It comes with this 2-zone water timer. 2-zone means that it can control 2 different hoses at one time, and a Wi-Fi weather station hub to give you all of the indoor and outdoor stats. Once you log in on the HomeGar app, you're ready to go. You can do all sorts of things from here, like set up your watering plan. We can set what time we want the water to start, the duration that it runs for, or we could change it to water usage. It has a built-in flow meter, which is pretty sweet if you're someone that has water limitations. Here we can set our limit to 6 gallons. And as far as intervals, you can water daily if you need to. Otherwise, there's odd day, even day, or even full customization. Now we just go set up our 2-zone water timer to our water source, and it'll be ready to go based on the settings that I use. To get your own RainPoint Smart Watering System for 15% off, you can use my code Homestead15, and you can get 10% off of anything in their store with my other code Homestead10. I'll put my affiliate link and more information about the system in the description below. Let's go ahead and finish the tour. Now let's move on to some sad stuff. So up front, we're doing pretty good. These are just more companion planting flowers. We have the nasturtiums, the calendula, and another nasturtium. And then this is my garden failure, this poor sad zucchini. And it's not even my zucchini. I tried so many times to get my own zucchini seeds to germinate and just failed every time. I think either my seeds were old or they were bad, who knows. And we were already getting late in the season, so in a moment of desperation, I bought this from my local nursery, and I don't know, it's just kind of stagnant. I think it was already too old when I bought it, like it had been at the nursery for a while. And zucchini is one of those things that you don't want to have in a pot for very long. And it's just, I don't know. We'll see if we get anything from that this year. Next we have more flowers, another round of broccolis, which are also looking awesome. We have some more calendula knocked in here. So I get the cabbage worms really bad. So that's why I'm using all sorts of flowers in here to hopefully try to deter them. It's like a losing battle. In the summer, when I look out, there's just those white moths just flying everywhere. Not only in my garden, but we must have something in this field that they love. They're just flitting around throughout the entire property. So it's just a losing battle. I just need to do what I can to keep them out of my space here, and they can stay in the field. So next we have big chunks of kale. We love kale around here, and it freezes really well. We were eating it all winter in soups and stews and casseroles and quiche and all the things. So it's definitely too much for us to all eat it all fresh, but we freeze a lot of it. So these guys are looking absolutely awesome. And I grow 2 different varieties. This is the Aran kale, and this is the Black Magic kale. This variety tends to resist the cabbage worms a whole lot better, where these guys get bitten on quite a bit. So this is my ultimate favorite variety. I grow it every single year. I'll make sure to link this one if you guys are interested in getting a pack of seeds for yourselves. Okay, so we've made it to the onions, and I think we're doing okay here. We're still pretty early on in the season here for Zone 3, Zone 4 Minnesota, so not much for bulb development yet, especially because it has been so cloudy and rainy. My vegetables that like a little bit of sunshine are stunted a little bit, but I'm hopeful that things will take off. The greens are really developing. They look happy. We just need to get into summer and out of spring. I've also found that the mulching is working great for the onions. They have a really shallow root system, and so having that mulch around them just really keeps that even moisture that they like. And I plant pretty tightly. My plants are 4 inches apart, and I just do it in a big block instead of individual rows. And I feel like this is slightly tighter than I did last year. I maybe did 6 inches. We'll see if it pays off to do 4-inch spacing. Again, I'm a greedy gardener and you don't know until you try. So we'll see how it goes. If it ends up stunting them a little bit, I'll go back to a 6-inch spacing. But yeah, this block method has always worked pretty well for me. Next up, we have some peppers. So I have a variety of different peppers going on here. We have some Corno di Toro, which is kind of nice eating pepper. It also freezes really well. And I did cave when I was at the nursery and got a few plants I wanted to try, like these purple peppers. I think that's gonna be really fun, so may as well. And we're still pretty small, but we're starting to get, you know, some development on here. Again, it's been cold, cloudy and rainy, so these guys are just kind of hanging on until the weather turns. Here's my nice big bunch of calendula. They kind of got smashed by all the rain hitting here. So a few days ago, it was this lovely perky bush, but we're looking a little flattened at the moment. But so many lovely blooms. So I'll go through here and pick blooms every few days, and you can just use your hands and they snap off just like that. And then I dehydrate them. They make a great tea. They're also great just muddled up in a glass of ice water. It's really nice and refreshing. The other nice thing about chamomile is it self-seeds itself. So I didn't plant this year. They actually just kind of came up on their own. If you let the flowers mature into seed heads and just drop on the ground, they'll come up on its own the next year. So this is just gonna keep producing, kind of a low maintenance plant. And then here is my very tiny corn. We got them to germinate at least, but same story as my other peppers and everything. They're just kind of waiting for the weather to turn. We'll see if hopefully they'll finish out in time. But again, next week is looking better, looking sunny and warm. So hopefully that'll perk these guys up and get them going. Oh, and one other thing you may have noticed that I don't have these sections mulched. And that's because of this cold, gloomy weather. I really want to get the soil temp up as high as possible for these hot loving things, and same thing with the zucchini. So I'm leaving the mulch off for now until we really start to finally maybe get into summer, and then I'll get the mulch down. So I did 2 rows of corn for this row. I also have 2 rows here and 2 rows here. You want to make sure you have corn in blocks of at least 4 for adequate pollination. So I have 6 here minus a little strip here. So this is my absolute favorite method to grow squash. So most of these are butternut squash. I think I have 8 butternut squash plants in here and 1 Cinderella pumpkin. So I love to plant them in the middle of my corn patch for multiple reasons. One, if you've ever grown pumpkin or squash before, you know that those vines will take over. They'll just absolutely go crazy and start just squashing any smaller plants. So I like to grow it in the understory of the corn. So by the time this really starts taking over, the corn should hopefully be a little bit taller so they don't affect each other. And then the squash also acts as a living mulch for the corn, so I may not even need to get in here and put straw down. And then the third thing that I've noticed here in Minnesota, we get cold snaps early, so we can often get freezing temperatures in mid-September, and sometimes my squash isn't ripe in time, so having them kind of protected underneath the understory of the corn really helps protect them on those frost nights. I'll notice if I have some vines running on the outside here where they're not protected, they'll have some frost damage, where the vines under here, protected by the corn, it's good. So love doing this method. And for whatever reason, the squash is really doing well. So thankfully, despite the weather, these guys are cranking away. I did start them indoors a few weeks ahead of time to give myself a jump start. The other thing that I really like about butternut squash and pumpkins is they tend to be unaffected by that dreaded squash vine borer. And butternut squash and the pumpkins are great storage vegetables. We actually just finished eating our last butternut squash just a few weeks ago from last year's harvest. So it's a huge staple for us on our homestead and a food source to carry us through our long winters. Here is my garlic, which is looking mighty fine. I think probably the best garlic I've ever grown. And something I just noticed yesterday, I wanted to leave them on here so I could show you guys, are the garlic scapes already. If you've never eaten these before, oh my gosh, you're missing out. We absolutely love garlic scapes, and this is the perfect time to snip them. So you want to grab them just as they're starting to curve, because then they're still tender. If you wait until they really get curly and old, they can be kind of chewy and not so good. But this is perfect. So you just snip them off right at the base here. And these, basically, you can treat them like asparagus. And we just love to grill them as a side for our dinner. And oh my gosh, they are so good. You can also make pesto. I'll chop it up and do it in a stir fry. So many uses for the garlic scapes. And then garlic scapes also give us a signal that the garlic themselves are going to be ready to harvest in a few weeks. And we're not quite there yet, so I always wait until my bottom 2 to 3 sets of leaves have yellowed and dried out. So that hasn't happened yet, and we can't see the bulb. They're buried way down in there, but we're getting there. And garlic is the only thing I plant in the fall. So if you missed my garlic planting video, definitely check it out. So these guys have been in the garden since early October. And the nice thing about garlic is once that comes out in a few weeks, that's gonna open up a whole new section for planting. So I've been debating what I wanna plant here so it's not just bare all summer. I'll probably do bush beans. We eat a lot of beans. They freeze really well. We love dilly beans, all the good things. So I'll probably just do a bunch of bush beans there. It has a fast turnaround time too. So we should be able to get another round of beans in before winter hits. And this is my lovely little dill patch, which is probably way too thick. I need to get in here and do some thinning. But this also came back on its own. It kind of self-seeded. So if you end up planting dill, I would put it in an area that you're okay with it just kind of living, unless you want to be digging up little seedlings every spring. So that's why I have it on the end, so that it's just kind of a good permanent location versus in the middle where it gets a little tricky. So these guys are doing good. There's even little dills coming up along the side. It's not bothering anybody, so I'm just letting it go. Next up are my carrots, which are pretty hit or miss. You can see some are looking great and we're getting up there, while others are itty bitty. So I think what happened, if you watched my video where I was planting these carrot seeds, we started off strong and I covered my seeds so that they would germinate well, and they did. When I peeked under there, things are looking great, but the problem is that I got busy and I never uncovered them. I just kept them covered, and I think they just kind of got smothered. So that was totally my fault, user error. And so I've come back through and I've reseeded. So any place you see the small seedlings are my new starts, which is pretty much mostly down there. So fingers crossed that it's not too late. I did have to switch my seeds because my original plan was to do 100-day carrots on the outside so that they would be ready by fall to pack them away into storage. But we're getting late into the season now, so I switched over to a 60-day seed, and hopefully it'll all even out. And here is my sea of potatoes. So this is the main patch where just the last few that didn't fit ended up going down there. But these guys are looking awesome. So I do have a couple more, I think just these two that actually have some more purple color to the leaves, which is kind of fun. These are my 2 remainder purple potatoes, but the rest of these are my red chieftain potatoes. These guys I've been growing for, gosh, maybe 8 or 9 years, and I just love them. They're delicious, they're dependable, they store well, all the things. But this year I am doing a slightly different method. So typically I hill them with soil once they're about a foot tall and are ready to get buried a little deeper. But this year I am just mulching with a double layer of mulch. So I did my initial kind of, you know, maybe 4 inches of the organic straw. And then once they were tall enough, then I piled even more on top. So I think that's gonna work well, and then I don't have to worry about doing a bunch of soil work. So far they're looking really, really happy. We're even starting to get little flowers on there. Next up are my bush beans. So these guys are up and looking happy. I did come in and I mulched them yesterday. So I think that's gonna go pretty well. Beans, they like warm, but they don't need warm per se, like the peppers and the squash and cucumbers and that type of a thing. So these guys are gonna be happy and enjoy their weed-free environment with the mulch on there. So these are all bush beans. I'm kind of more of a bush bean girl versus pole beans. They're just so easy to grow. They're very productive, they're delicious, and I can probably get a second crop in this row once I harvest these. So bush beans produce for about 6 weeks or so, and then they kind of go kaput. So I'll pull them, seed them again probably, and get another round of bush beans going. Now we've made it to my tomato patch. I have a few things going on here, and these guys are just doing awesome. I think these are the best tomatoes I've ever grown. They're even looking amazing in the pots before I got them out here. So can't wait to see them explode. So what I have up here first is, I think I have two of more of a grape tomato. These are called Mountain Vineyard. Did really well last year. I freeze dried a lot of them, which were great to throw in, you know, pastas or quiche or any of that. So I'm excited to have them again. And then this is my one slicer tomato. So I do mostly processing or paste tomatoes, which are these guys we'll go through in a minute. But I like to have at least one slicer for fresh eating. So this one is my pink Boer tomato. I've actually never grown this variety before, so I'm excited to give it a go, and we're already getting little tomatoes on there. And then for the rest of these are my production tomatoes. I'm going to be processing and canning all the things. So these are a combination of Amish paste tomatoes and Plum Regal. They're looking really good already too. We're starting to get little tomatoes on there. So these guys are actually getting big enough that I think it's probably time to go through and do some pruning, especially on these lower leaves. So I typically don't like to have anything hanging on the ground, especially with how wet it's been. I'll probably do that after this video, is start trimming off any lower leaves now that it's taller and I can afford to lose some lower leaves. So definitely will want to get on that. And as far as trellising goes, I like to do tomato cages. I know there's a lot of different ways of staking them up, and the cages just work well for me. It's simple. I can set it up in no time. It's just what works well for me, so I'm running with it. And then down here we have another pepper patch. So here I think is where a lot of my poblanos are. Those also freeze really well, which I love to do, and then throw that in chili. Here I'm trying a new pepper. So these are my little Scotch bonnets. I fell in love with them after we went to a family wedding in Jamaica in February, and so we'll see. They sounds like they have they need a long growing season, so it's questionable if we'll be able to, you know, get much out of them here in Minnesota, but we're gonna give it a try. And then here is a habanero. I like to make fermented hot sauce, so that's wonderful in there. And then same with all my cayennes. Thankfully cayennes do really well here in Minnesota, so these guys should really be the stars of the hot sauce for sure. And again, no mulch here. I'm just trying to get that soil temp up so that they can thrive, but hopefully next week I can get the mulch down. And then at the very end here is where we have our cucumbers. So I'm trying a little bit of a different method here. So I've always done the cattle panel fencing just with T-posts. That works great. I can move it around the garden wherever they happen to be for the year, but I'm doing kind of back to back. I've always done them just in one row, but then what I noticed when they were in one long row, they would create a lot of shade on the next row over. And so I was trying to scrunch them down and do two shorter rows. So we'll see how that goes. That might get kind of a pain in the butt to reach in there to harvest, but I think it'll be all right. So I have 3 of pickling cucumbers, and these guys are doing pretty good so far. They're already starting to vine up. And then over here, I'm trying something new. This is a little cucamelon. So I've never eaten them before. We'll see. It sounded too fun not to try though. Now you might be noticing that there's a few things missing back here, like my lettuces and herbs and that type of a thing. And that's because I moved them to my new garden beds up by the cabin. So let's jump over there. Okay, so here is the remainder of the garden. I have some raised beds here. And most recently, maybe you saw this video. If you haven't already, definitely check it out. But I just converted this whole section into some edible landscaping. So let's dive in. So first here on the left is where I have a variety of different baby greens. I actually have 3 different kinds. This is kind of a kale mix, and then this is a spicy salad mix, and this is just your general salad mix. And this has been awesome just to run out from the cabin and grab a quick salad for lunch, that type of a thing. So these guys are great, and it's a cut and come again. So I've actually already been through here and harvested, and it all grew back again. But it won't last for too much longer. You can see some of these have bolted already, so we'll enjoy it while it lasts. Here in the center, I have some basil. So these guys are doing all right. I need to get in there and remember to prune back. So you can see that this basil is already starting to flower out. So if you go in there and kind of pinch off the top, then instead of it going to seed, it'll branch out and just create more leaves. So let's go ahead and do this guy too. these are my daikon radish, which I plan to grow to make my kimchi, but when I pulled one out the other day, I was not all that impressed. We'll do one together. So this is what I'm getting. So they're not very big yet. They should be big by now. There we go. You can see that there is some damage in here. So I think I have, ooh, what are they called? Root maggots, where they just destroy your crop from underneath. And I had a big trouble with that with my turnips last year and some of my radishes. And so that's why I actually moved them over here. So these are my turnips too, because I was like, okay, they're in my soil back there at the big garden, and I'll try them up here and see if they do better in the raised beds, but it's not looking so good. Just not really thriving, which is surprising because the weather's been perfect. You can see all my other brassicas are really doing well, but these kind of root vegetables are really struggling. So if you have found a way to manage those root maggots, please let me know, because it's time for me to move to phase 2. I thought maybe just going to the raised bed would be enough, but not so much. And you can see from my turnips too, they are just not, I mean, look at that. That's pathetic. At my last homestead, I grew amazing turnips, and turnips were an absolute staple for us. They are good in the fridge for months and months. And so this is really cramping our style as far as self-sufficiency goes. These typically really help get us through winter. So I'm gonna have to get to the drawing board and see what to do about that, because this is no good. So this is definitely a garden fail here. And this bare spot is where I was going to do my fall seeding for a fall crop of rutabagas. Rutabagas are the ultimate self-sufficiency root vegetable, I feel like. While the turnips do pretty good in storage, the rutabagas are king. They just last forever in the fridge. And I haven't done it yet because I have a feeling it's just not gonna go well based on how these are going. So I don't know, I'm just sitting here, not very motivated to fill this at the moment. But over here we are doing good. The strawberries are coming in. Ooh, it looks like we have a little red one in there, but it's not quite ripe enough yet, but in a couple of days for sure. So the strawberries are doing good, looking nice and lush. And then over here is my St. John's wort. I love to make a tincture with this. It's really good for those winter blues, and that's definitely rampant around here in Minnesota with our long winters. So I love St. John's wort. It's a flower that you end up harvesting. So no flowers yet, but we'll get there. And then this is a marshmallow plant. So the root is very effective. It has some great kind of, lack of a better word, slimy properties, which is really good for if you need some lubrication, whether you have a dry cough or whatever it is. So this is going to be a great medicinal plant for us. But you don't harvest the roots until year 2, so I'm just not going to touch this for a while. This is my experimental bed of more peppers. I'm giving these guys a try here. I kind of have one of each variety that I already have out back, just to see how they do in a raised bed compared to out back. The soil temp is going to be a little bit warmer in a raised bed than an in-ground garden. So fingers crossed, we'll give it a go and see how they do this year. And I love these raised beds. I got these from Epic Gardening. If you're interested, I have a discount code for you. I'll link it in the description. These have just been awesome, easy to assemble, and they're just cute. I think they look really great up here. All right, we're on the home stretch. So things over here. So this first isn't food. These are actually my great-grandpa's irises, so those are special to me, so no food there. But here are my blueberries, and you can see this one doesn't really have much for berries, but ooh, we are looking so good over here. I love utilizing blueberry bushes in landscaping, so if you're looking for an easy way to grow some food, just pull out those useless bushes in the landscaping and grow some blueberries instead. Same with rhubarb. If you are in a northern climate, I absolutely love rhubarb. So easy to grow, it's happy anywhere, it's productive, and I think it's beautiful. Next up are my herbs. So a lot of these are herbs in here. So these are my thyme, but the problem with our cold, wet, rainy, blah weather is my herbs are not so happy because they like Mediterranean conditions where it's nice, dry, sandy. They actually like poor quality soil, where I have heavy, wet clay soil. that's also mulched. I don't know. We'll see how they do, but we have some thyme in here. So I have 6 different thyme plants. This is my rosemary. I have another one here and another one here. They haven't grown all that much since I planted them a couple weeks ago, but we'll see, especially when the weather dries out. I'm hopeful that they will do a little bit better. Here are my lettuces. These guys are doing pretty good, and I feel like these little butter lettuces are so cute. Here is my weed bed. I haven't done too much in here. I need to get in here and do some weeding. But here, if you can even tell, I did plant a couple rows of cilantro. So those have germinated. I need to get in there and thin them out. There's some back there too. And then here is my sorrel. This is a new plant for me. These are just an edible green that does come back after year to year. And they're supposed to have a really good kind of citrus punch flavor to them. So they were looking pretty sad when I first planted them, and they're looking a lot better. So I'm hopeful that they're gonna thrive and love this spot. Next we have parsley. These guys are looking pretty darn good. I think these guys are loving their new spot. Same with the sage. The sage has really blown up. This is my sage from last year that I dug up from the garden and brought over here. And these are new little sage plants. And I almost forgot to give you guys an update on the weed situation. So we chatted about it in one of my previous videos about how to control the weeds from creeping in around the perimeter of the fence. So I got my 30% vinegar solution in the mail, and I've given it a whirl once so far when we did have a little span of hot, dry weather, and it worked awesome. The weeds immediately went crisp and dry. But unfortunately, now that it's back to gloomy and rainy, they're starting to revive a little bit, and I haven't been able to spray. It's just pointless because everything's wet and just is continuing to be wet. So I think as long as you have a set of dry weather, it's gonna be an awesome, awesome solution. So I'm definitely keeping that around. Once it dries up a little bit, I'll get back to spraying that. So that's it for garden tour here in my Minnesota garden in June. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate your support. Also, huge thank you to RainPoint for sponsoring this video. If you want to check out their watering system, definitely do. I'm so excited to have that. Hopefully it'll stop raining here so I can actually really put it to good use. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't already so you don't miss more gardening tips along the way. We're gonna get into food preservation season and all that good stuff. Again, thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll catch you on the next video.